Coming up next on Meet the Farmer TV.
This program is a production of Meet the Farmer TV, LLC, in association with Planet Earth Diversified, Nelly Productions, and Leslie P. Jenkins Photography and Graphic Design.
The challenge to me is to get past the rhetoric of exemption, the rhetoric of we're not part of the problem, leave us alone, and get to a more unified approach that says we're one food system, we have one set of consuming public, we want healthy local food and healthy regionally produced food, and we want healthy globally produced food. We want food of all scales to be safe, supportive, and healthy of the farmers, the population, and the environment. And to do that, we have to be part of the debate. We can't say, we're not part of the problem, just leave us alone, we're okay because we sell direct. We need to say, as direct market farmers, we do want to understand the best practices that are appropriate to our scale of operation and can help us sustain the highest level of confidence in our local consuming public. But we want to also, in standing for that responsibility, we want to do so with an integrity that says, but we are not in a position to stand for the same levels of scrutiny, nor is it appropriate to bring to us the same levels of scrutiny that a larger business, which commingles product from many sources and distributes them far and wide, would also need. So we have to become even more educated and aware than we already are about the relationship between our on-farm practices and those of larger farms. We need to understand how what goes on at our farms can be misunderstood and potentially inappropriately labeled as unsafe. And we need to be able to plead our case. And to do that, we need better training, better connection with our land-grant universities for better research, better support by the government to partner with the NGOs and the other associations and the other organizations who are investing time and resources to preserve and enhance the choices around local and regional food. But we need to do it in a way that's respectful and participatory with the larger industry who takes seriously its responsibility to feed the large majority of American consumers and in fact the large majority of consumers in the world. In my view, we want to be part of the same food system. That's the path to the greatest wholeness and the greatest success for everybody. It's a challenging question. The question you ask about what should small-scale and local and regional-oriented farms understand about food safety is a really challenging question. The conventional wisdom is that small farms don't make people sick, and large farms do. Or certain products from large farms do. For example, spinach, the E. coli outbreak in 2006. For example, tomatoes and jalapenos, the problem, well, it turned out to be jalapenos. They thought it was tomatoes. The problem in 2008. Center for Science in the Public Interest has recently released a list of the top 10 culprits when it comes to food safety, and 5 of them were produce. Well, the problem with the idea that small-scale and local agriculture doesn't make people sick is that right now, with local and small-scale production and regional and local food consumption representing only 1.5% of the food that we consume, it may be that we are not as blameless as we believe, we're just not statistically significant. Now, the flip side of that is that if a farm in California that's bringing in spinach from many different locations and washing and bagging and shipping to thousands of other locations, if there's a problem from one of those fields, it affects a wide swath of people and it affects a large number of people. So what happens is that scale and distance exacerbate any problems. Surely we can say that with smaller scale and less distance, even if we have a problem, it will be smaller in its impact. But I think the more appropriate goal is to say, we want to assure that our practices don't place our customers at risk. We have an inherent trust between ourselves and our consumers when we're in a local or a direct market scenario because of the relationships. We don't want to compromise that by being unaware of or inattentive to best practices. Every farmer I know believes that we don't make anyone sick, But if we ask them to demonstrate the best practices that assure that we don't do so, I think we would come up empty-handed in most cases. So my belief is that the kind of training that's being asked, that we are advocating for, is simply common sense and good business, regardless of your scale of operation. A good example of this problem is that most food safety, foodborne illness issues originate in bad personal hygiene practices on the farm or processor, in other words, at the staff level. This is going to sound pretty lame and pretty simplistic, but how well are we doing at teaching people to wash their hands? How well are we doing at assuring that when a food break is taken, hand washing occurs coming out of that break before going back in the field to harvest? How well are we assuring that when we move from a livestock area where we may be walking through fresh manure or handling our chickens or the eggs and we move back into the vegetable area, that hand washing occurs? This stuff seems common sense, but unfortunately common sense is surprisingly uncommon. So I don't in any way see it as a bad idea. I think it's just good business to ask that all of our food producers, regardless of scale, develop some plan and some training, in-house training and some program to assure that everyone who handles the food handles it to a pretty high standard. My little farm in New Mexico is Beneficial Farm. It's the oldest community-supported agriculture project in New Mexico. We have a website, www.beneficialfarm.com. We also have a blog, and we have a Facebook, and we even have a Twitter. So we can get all those to you, and those are good to use because I have staff helping me keep track of those. For people who are looking for ways to keep an eye on the prize as we move forward towards solutions, I encourage that you watch the websites of Food and Water Watch, of the National Organic Coalition, and of the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, and of your local and regional organic farming and gardening associations. Those will be the people who are most able to bring you timely and up-to-date information on the problems and on the possible interventions that can help address those problems.
And what about other organizations you might be working with?
I'd like to mention a couple more opportunities for the public, the general public, to get access to information. One is your local food co-op. The National Cooperative Grocers Association, which is a member trade association for over 200 consumer-owned grocery stores around the country, is also very much involved in protecting choice and in supporting local and regional food system. And so anywhere you live in the United States, your local co-op is liable to be a place where you can get good and up-to-date information on the challenges of preserving this opportunity and choice, and of the ways in which we as individuals and the public can join in the debate and contribute to solutions. And another source is called the National Good Food Network, which is a project of the Wallace Center at Winrock International. The National Good Food Network maintains a website with information about currently 8 regional projects that are working very diligently on scaling up the supply of locally and regionally produced foods in their area. Now, these projects are unique. They're beyond the direct marketing approach, and they're specifically about helping local agriculture and local food distribution systems gain traction into larger buying groups such as food service and supermarket channels. So there's another source of information for you, which is the National Good Food Network and its website, which has information that may be even more pertinent to questions around scaling up and around the distribution of local and regionally produced foods and the food safety issues that are being addressed at that level.
Our attitude, our philosophy is one of gratitude toward the animals. So for example, we butcher the chickens on the farm and we say a prayer of gratitude for them. We feel that in order to nourish your body and appreciate where your food comes from, you need to appreciate the animals or whatever, the plants that nurture you. And when we don't do that, when you don't have that moment of appreciation or understanding, that's when you end up moving in the direction of factory farming, which creates unhealthy animals. They suffer. It produces food that is not healthy for people, and the people that are raising the animals are not making money either. They're living in poverty. And so what we want to do is philosophically start from this base of gratitude. And from there, we feel like if you treat your animals correctly, you'll end up with healthy food, you don't pollute the environment, we're able to make, you know, a livable income off of it, and people get food that's good for them. So, and that's just another way to connect the local food dots. So if we start with this basis of appreciating the animals that we raise, from that we not only get the healthy food, but we also get a more sustainable farming system. Because in this kind of system, rather than raising animals in a warehouse or a feedlot where they're going to create a lot of pollution that then is a liability for society, we can raise them in such a way that they're being moved across the pastures, and their waste, instead of becoming a liability and a pollutant, becomes a benefit to the farm environment. It fertilizes the ground just enough for the pastures to recover. For example, our farm was a rundown farm with a lot of erosion, and our animals are actually improving the ecology of the farm. And we can raise these animals while also benefiting the local wildlife. So since we've begun raising the animals, we actually have more wildlife on the farm. We've let the creeks grow up. We can allow for animals, other animals, deer, turkey, you know, even fox, to come into our area, and we don't have to kick them out in a way that you would do if we were raising produce. So that's a nice benefit of that as well. So another way that we try to connect the dots in the local food movement is that we like to have people come out to the farm. We have school groups come out and little kids that come out, and we try to educate them about the fact that, for example, you know, there used to be old McDonald's farm where all the animals were raised on the farm, and now they're put in confinement, separated into these factory systems. And why is that not a good thing? And what can we do to make the animals' lives better that will improve the situation for the environment and for the food that they give us as well?
One of the downfalls of where we are right now in an agricultural society is we've turned to these factory suppliers of food, and we've built all of our business models on that.
Right.
And so we're ready for the big 18-wheeler truck to pull up with everything we need for the day. And we get at a big location like Observatory Hill Dining Hall, we get a delivery every day. And so really everything that's going to be served in the next 24 hours is on that truck at 6 o'clock in the morning. To change the business model and have 35 pickup trucks pull up, and this guy's got the tomatoes and I've got your chickens and everything else, it's not impossible. It's just a complete change in a business model.
Right.
What would make that simpler is some type of co-op or something like that. It would save the community on transportation costs and things like that, so that every farmer isn't having to transport all the way into town.
And we do need to get away from the cheap food policy, because input costs are going up, and to match the input costs necessary to producing food and to still try to produce a cheap food product, a lot of that cheap food's coming from overseas. And I don't think that's the best thing in the world for this country either. So we need to pay attention to what's going on in the trends, and we need to do our part.
Even a product that has to travel a great distance has lost a lot of its vitality in travel, and that's where the little balancing act of, do you get a local thing that may or may not be organic versus an organic thing that's traveled across the country. I think the freshness brings a lot more vitality sometimes than something that's been packed and shipped for weeks at a time. And also, because we look at the whole health of the whole organism of the human being as well as the planet, we want to make that commitment to the practices that sustain our planet as well.
A lot of this is so much about relationships and so much about strengthening the web of our community. Really, given the current global crises that we are facing, it really is about community, and the best thing we can do right now is get to know our neighbors, get to know our community, get to know who has what and how we can work together. And that's the way we're going to not just survive, but thrive.
Food is about the taste. And so we see this a lot with even some of the produce that we buy. A lot of local produce may not make it on the grocery store shelf because it's the wrong shape, it's the wrong size, it's the wrong weight, it's not uniform, it's not a 6x6 tomato, so right. Lord knows I can't use it. Yeah. What difference does it make what it looks like? Right. If it's a fresh, locally grown tomato, it costs less during season. It may be an odd shape or size, but we're probably slicing it or cutting it or whatever we're doing with it anyway, so none of that's important.
I think for me, the really important aspect of local food is the ability to recommit to the places in which we live, the real places, the places that are inhabited by people, and people that in this day and age of global food, we don't know them, we don't have faces, we don't have names, they're anonymous. Local food gives us that possibility, that potential of reconnecting to people and the landscapes that sustain us. So for me, local food is very much about reconnecting to place, re-nurturing a kind of sense of rootedness and commitment to the places in which we live.
You can have a farming lifestyle on under 5 acres, that there is a way to make a profit, make a living, and not have to have that 100 acres and a big tractor. Doing the greenhouses, which may be a large initial expense, but really not that much if you're considering buying 1,000 acres and the tractor and everything you need to do outside in the field. On 15,000 square feet, we can make enough profit to live off of.
Right.
And if everybody looked at it that way, then farming wouldn't be so frightening. And if you have enough small farmers, you can support a community. And the whole idea that we're trying to get across is that you can do it. You don't have to have your fruit flown in from Mexico or Canada. Your tomatoes don't have to come from Florida. It can be done. It just takes enough people to want to do it.
If you think about the impact that agriculture and farming methods, distribution, the quality of the food that you're eating, the nutrition that has a tremendous impact on every other issue in a community as far as the health of young minds and education, and I believe it ripples out to everything from crime rates to just the general well-being and health of the greater communities. So if we can incorporate food into what we're doing, then we're utilizing that again as another medium on top of film and visual arts and all of that to really affect true positive change.
And food is ultimately the thing that connects all people. And we believe that all people can come together around food. So we found that we could connect to people everywhere we went. And people were a little wary of taking food from strangers, especially prepared food. But at the same time, it was one of the best ways that we had to bring people into our sphere and to begin conversations and get to know them. And food is an amazing tool and a thing that in connecting all people is a real tool for peace and for the work that we need in building communities. Emily and I both really truly believe in the power of community to heal the world and believe in the power of food to do that as well as a result. And we believe that if we change the way we eat, we change everything.
We're losing farms daily, and until we make sustainable farming a financially viable option, we'll continue to lose farms. I believe very strongly that our food system in this country is broken, and that one of the ways that our country is going to recover from these health, energy, environmental, economic issues is to completely reform the way that we think about food and the way that we eat. Back in, even in my kind of grandparents' day, if a local farmer had a catastrophe, everybody came together to help because this is where our food comes from. Now if a local farmer fails, we think, well, we can go to the grocery store and buy broccoli. Well, my commitment to eating locally, and the commitment that I think more and more people in this region are starting to share, is that if my farmer doesn't farm, I don't get broccoli. I mean, in order for me to eat the foods that I love, I have to figure out how to grow them in my food shed, because it is just unsustainable to eat food any other way. And so, I think it's a shift in consciousness that really creates community bonds and a connection, a spiritual connection, a physical connection to the land, to seasons, that a lot of us, in my generation grew up without. If you buy strawberries in December in Virginia, those strawberries had to have come from not even California. They've had to have come from somewhere overseas. And so the strawberries and they're probably grown conventionally, so they're the amendments are hurting the soil, and then they're picked, and they're probably not picked in fair trade. So they're also hurting kind of ethical, labor issues. And then they're put on an airplane and they're flown here, which is just a carbon nightmare. And then they're trucked across the country. And they're not ripe when they're picked, because otherwise they'd be mush when they got to us. So at some point in this process, somebody sprays a hormone on them to quick ripen them. And by the time you get the strawberry, there's this whole chain of mess. And it's almost, when you compound this by packaging and just the levels of changing hands, what you're left with is sort of a shadow of food. The only reason we have cheap food in America is because we massively subsidize the industrial food system through our taxes. None of these subsidies are going to small farmers. And we're subsidizing the rape of the land. We're subsidizing carbon catastrophe. We're subsidizing dead, tasteless food. And this is just something that I'm no longer willing to participate in. I mean, my family, we have opted out of the industrial food system. It's amazing how many children in America don't know what strawberry season is. They just don't even know there is a season. The other thing that we do is, I can't personally afford to buy meat, organically raised or pastured meat by the piece. But what I can afford to do is save my food budget, and I buy directly from farmers. So I'll buy a quarter or a half of an animal, or I'll split one with someone and then pay the butchering cost. And I can, my per pound cost for this is very low. And then I have a freezer, so we eat from our freezer. And a lot of people I hear talk about how it's too expensive to eat organically or to eat locally, and I just don't believe it. We're paying heavily for cheap food. We're paying in kind of other ways. But my family's food budget used to be $200 to $250 a week for groceries. I have a family of 5. And, I was buying good food, but not organic food. And now I spend maybe $50 a week. And sometimes I'll even go a month without going to the grocery store. And if you then factor in what I pay for the shares that I have a CSA share, 2 of them actually, so I get...
I'm sorry, CSA?
Community Supported Agriculture. These are farms where you buy a share in the farm and then you share the proceeds of the farm. So you pay up front for a season. So I have, Plowshare Community Farm is my vegetable CSA, and I get 2 shares from him, and then I have a milk share, 3 milk shares actually, with Catherine Russell. And I have, I buy meat from Joel Salatin at Polyface Farm, and then I get flour from Wade's Mill, and then I have there are other producers, Henley's Orchard, I get all of my fruit from them. And if I put everything together that I spend on all these farms, plus my family food budget, my food budget has decreased by almost 40% since I started eating locally. Now, it's a lot of work, but in my mind, it's a very fair trade.
All you have to do is turn the TV and see what's going on with your food in China, and you see this food scare and that food scare, and I know what's going on at so-and-so's farm. I can go out there, full transparency. I know what's going on in this kitchen, full transparency. When a restaurant sources local, what that says to me, if I'm eating there, is that they're committed to the market. They're committed to my local farmer. They're committed to bringing me something really good, and the partnership begins.
One of the things about organic and local food is the fact that one of the things I learned about 15 years ago in my profession is the fact that younger people were getting sicker at an early age with no predisposing dispositions, no genetics, they weren't smoking, they weren't overly obese. I attribute a lot of that to food, and a lot of that that stresses the importance of local food. And a lot of people don't realize that yet. If we shop at certain things where we don't know where the food comes from, we don't know how it's grown, right. What do we give people? Yeah. We give people the opportunity to actually not only give them food from a local area, but also they can meet me and I can tell them how it was grown.
Let's make sure agriculture has a strong economic future, and therefore you'll start seeing less and less farms going under. And when it comes down to it, we're a capitalist society. We need to be a country of entrepreneurs and business people. We need to be, like I say, visionaries and think about things differently. It's this thing, it says if you continue to do the same thing over and over, you're going to continue to get what you got. So we need to do things different every year, and really progress to make sure that we're building a stronger business for years 5 and 10 years down the road. So if your kids do want to come back to the farm, there's something there for them to come back to, and there's a place for them there beside you. So I get this asked me a lot of what can the government do more. Well, we need the government to do what it was designed to do. Help do the things that one person can't do for themselves. So we need the rules and regulations there to make sure everyone's playing on a level playing field. Other than that, get out of the way. Let the true entrepreneurs in the world, the true business people, the ones out there, let's let them go to work and give that product they want to the consumer to them directly and without the red tape.
The other kinds of things that I think could help this movement expand in the future is that if we really love this current interest by consumers in locally grown foods, and if all consumers in all of our communities could get out and find out where the farmers are and try to get to meet them and find out what their needs are, maybe even find out what their real problems are that they're facing, and help those problems come to light and help them solve those problems. I believe that consumer education could cause a strong positive change in agriculture in the state of Virginia. Our farmers do not always have a very easy road. They face a lot of risk, financial risk, marketing risk, production risk, human risk. All it takes to knock a farmer out for a whole season is a back injury. Very often, if everything is based on his own labor and he's got that injury, he's down for the whole season, it could be a catastrophic thing. The weather, the way that this changing weather is causing so much drought, the risk that farmers are having right now with the cost of fuel, and that fuel is for running their farm machinery and is even reflected in fertilizer, is the costs are becoming very high. I think that if the media presentations could be made and if consumer education could be done, so that what we see is tremendous concern for local food production by consumers and concern for maintaining agriculture in the state of Virginia by consumers. But I would love to see more education so that the consumers could have a real idea of what the farmers, what their opportunities are and what their barriers to success are, so that they could actually possibly provide some assistance to the farmers once in a while, or if we could possibly see if there could be some kind of safety net to help agriculture producers through these tragedies that occur once in a while. Those tragedies might be as bad as a local tornado or a hail event, or a sharp drop in prices due to some international scare that occurred in China connected to some dangerous new bacteria on a vegetable or something. We see these kinds of ups and downs all the time, and it's a shame that the farmer has to bear all of that trouble by themselves.
This program is a production of Meet the Farmer TV, LLC, in association with Planet Earth Diversified, Nelly Productions, and Leslie P. Jenkins Photography and Graphic Design. For additional information and extended versions of this program, visit our website, www.meetthefarmer.com.